My name is Cameron Collins. I am the community admin for the Sprocketeer community. I'm also a revenue operations strategist with Rev Partners. I've got my amazing co-host Mark Lerner here with Deal Hub, Director of Growth Marketing. And then we have our guest today, Dylan, which Dylan, I'd love for you to go ahead and introduce yourself to everyone.
Yeah, cool. What's up, everybody? My name's Dylan Wickliffe. I'm the VP of Growth here at Media Junction, former HubSpot employee turned HubSpot partner. So I've talked about both the product and the services now for quite a long time.
And one of the things that I really admire about you, Dylan, is that when it comes to working on both sides, I know you're just super passionate about HubSpot. What is what are some of the things that have been different in terms of engaging with Hub users from the HubSpot side compared to the partner side being on Media Junction now?
It just you got to go way deeper on the partner side. So whenever I was selling HubSpot software, I would say it was I won't go as far as to call it surface level, but I'm really only answering to your two or three biggest pain points and making sure that HubSpot can solve for them. But now on the services side, I have to think about all the little micro pain points and all the little steps between pain points and all the little details too. And now I'm dealing with actual end users and not just champions for procurement. I'm dealing with people who are going to be using the tool. And I think it's important that we're solving not just for the procurement team, but the people who are going to live in the tool day in and day out.
And one of the things that I know HubSpot is most often used for is sales process. Obviously, they've started as a marketing tool and they're still very heavily used now throughout the entirety of any given business. But having built and been heavily involved with the sales process for Media Junction, and then just having worked with all different types of sales processes in your career, what are some of the things that go into just building a solid sales process into HubSpot?
Yeah. How much
I know
time do
it's
we
a
have?
big question.
Yeah. How much time do we have? I think first is you got to be able to explain your sales process just in layman's terms. Like we'll figure out all the HubSpot isms with that later, but for now, being able to clearly articulate what your buyer's journey looks like. And that doesn't just start at filling out a form. And with you being in RevOps, that the sales process doesn't start on that first sales call. It starts well before then. So I would encourage people to go to scoot way back and get really HubSpotty with it and talk about the inbound methodology 101, right? And start and attract, convert, close, and delight, the four big phases of the flywheel. So I think you need to be solving for the top of the funnel, the middle of the funnel, and the bottom of the funnel. You need to be able to
Just
articulate your
that?
sales process. Say again.
Just those three?
Everything in between too. It's a circle,
No.
but I think
Yeah.
you got to be focused on everything, man. So I think this your sales process is not just your deal stages, which are very important. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into it. I think you need to be automating repeatable processes. I think you need to be rolling something out. I think failure to launch is a big problem with any kind of CRM rollout. It's we're so obsessed with it being perfect and not having anything wrong that we don't do anything. So I think for me, like my whole mindset behind rolling out sales process in HubSpot is done is better than perfect. I'm a huge fan of going live with something and fixing it if something's wrong with it later, rather than trying to over engineer it or engineer it so perfectly that nothing could ever go wrong. So I think done is better than perfect, and your sales process is a living, breathing part of your business. So it's going to evolve, it's going to change over time. I'm quite literally dabbling in HubSpot with regard to our sales process, at least every single day. I'm tweaking a property, I'm tweaking a workflow, I'm adding a new little idea. I just recently turned our pipeline from two pipelines to six pipelines at the beginning of this year. So there's a lot that goes into it. I don't know. For me, I think to answer that more concisely, it's be able to clearly articulate all the different stages of your buyer's journey from I just found out you exist to I'm now referring people to you. And then done is better than perfect. Let your sales process evolve, both tangibly in HubSpot and intangibly just as you're living life.
I love done is better than perfect because
Yeah.
in HubSpot, we talk a lot about adoption. And I think that oftentimes, where, particularly on the RevOps side, one of the challenges that we run into is getting something built and then getting someone to use it. And if you spend 3 months building something and then 30 days trying to get people to use it, I think that there's an argument to be made to rolling something out in 30 days, getting that used, and then fixing and rinsing and repeating. Depends probably on scope and scale and what you're doing, but
Yeah.
done is
And
better
it's
than
the start.
perfect.
That's like the startup model, right? The reason that startups are able to move fast and break things is they do them MVP, they test, they iterate, as opposed to spending all this time. Even if you do research, there's assumptions that are baked into some of the things you do, and they're not going to land the way you thought you did
Yeah.
that they would.
And we don't even call them MVPs anymore. And sometimes we do if we know already, like we're scoping out this huge engagement and we need something live within 30 days leading up to that, we might consider that an MVP. But especially for new HubSpot users, for us, this is not an MVP. This is just where we're starting. And maybe it's nuance and I'm overthinking it some, but it's just, it doesn't matter if we call this an MVP or if we call this your final version one, it's going to evolve dramatically. If it looks the same in 2 or 3 years from now, then we all did something wrong. I'm telling you, every day I'm changing something in HubSpot. So I don't know. I think it's just a much more fluid thing than people want it to be sometimes.
I love that concept. If it's the same in 3 years or in such amount of time, then we definitely miss the mark. And that's true because the flip side of adoption is iteration, right? So you
Yeah.
get someone to use something, it's going to change at some point. And best thing we can do in terms of whether we're talking about the sales process or otherwise is communicate throughout the process to reduce friction, have a plan to reduce friction. But Mark, to your point, move fast, break things. And I
Yeah.
think that's why HubSpot
And
is so
adapt.
popular.
Yeah,
Yep.
the pace of change, it's hard to quantify, but it feels like the pace of change overall in the kind of external macro is increasing. And so the requirements to be adaptable and change and not be fixed in your everything in your process and all those things, it's super important more now than ever. And so that has to be baked into the entire process.
Yeah. And just check your ego at the door. A lot of salespeople, like, we like the way that we do things. We don't want change because this works. I'm making money doing it this way. But the more and more people who get hands and eyes on your HubSpot instance, the better, because that's more feedback, that's more vantage points. And I don't know, for us, like we just have a super open dialogue around our CRM at all times. For years, we've been running 2 separate portals too. So just it gets really confusing that way where I don't know, like the newest member on our team, I want their opinion. Like, what's hard for you to do in HubSpot? What is not built well for you? Because for me, it's easy because I'm used to it. So, like, where are you stumbling over things? And then also, what are some things like, I don't know, like Deanna on our team? Deanna and I disagree on when deals should be created because we want to argue over what's going to impact close rates. And that's not a deal yet. And I'm like, yeah, but deals don't get lost like leads do. And then but I can also like measure close rates. I can disqualify some close loss reasons to not count against my close rate. So I'm like, it's just funny like having that open conversation because there's things that just constantly evolve and it comes from multiple people's vantage points. So I don't know, you may have one HubSpot admin or one HubSpot architect who's running the show, but I think everybody who's got hands and eyes on the platform should have a voice at the table.
And so if we go to the theme and the topic of our show, how to make a sales process that doesn't suck, the unfortunately arbitrary answer to that is
It
as long
depends.
as it fits with your sales methodology and your business methodology, then you're starting in the right direction. Because to your point, Dylan, like what constitutes a deal? Some companies might just say the first sign there's a revenue opportunity, and some might have other criteria, right? Maybe they want an ICP fit before they consider it a deal. And where do you draw that line?
There are some really binary analytics you can look at. If you're hitting your revenue targets, you're hitting sales goals, that's good. So that's a good telltale sign that something's working well. But for me, I think if you're hitting sales targets, you're hitting revenue targets, and your CRM is just constantly evolving with your team, I think those are 3 really good measurable tactics.
I would definitely agree. And you mentioned that you recently blew up your pipelines going from 2 to 6. Probably don't need to get
Yes.
into the specifics, but I know oftentimes conversations around expanding pipelines are sometimes around creating a process for cross selling, upselling, renewals. Was it anything along the lines of getting that partition of data, or were you guys looking at something else and expanding pipelines?
We just have a lot of different channels, and a lot of these different channels have different processes, and that's become our pipeline rule. If it has a different process, it has a different pipeline. So we have a pipeline for selling to customers. We have a pipeline to selling to net new business. We have a channel referrals pipeline. We have our on-demand pipeline, which is like our e-commerce stuff, products. We have marketplace transactions. So just like some of our pipelines don't even require a process. It's all automated. So it's like just segment that stuff so I can track on it on a pipeline level. And then some of our stuff just I don't sell the same way to an existing customer as I would a brand new prospect. So that's a separate sales process for us too. A lot more connect and discovery and schmooziness. Whereas my customers I've known for years, it's, yeah, what do you want? I'll sell it to you tomorrow. Let's get started. Which is not too
So,
different from my new business selling either, honestly. But
and to the point that you mentioned earlier, because if it has a different process, it deserves a different pipeline. But then all of that is just talking about sales pipelines.
yeah,
And I know that when the leads object, quote unquote, got rolled out, it caused a lot of people were turning their heads. So I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are around usage of the lead object. Yay, nay, depends.
all right, we're gonna do this. I'm anti lead object right now, and I definitely am in the minority, and I'm willing to say I'm probably not right. But for us and our systems right now, it's either not formatted properly or it's just not a necessary part of our process because we're so used to tracking leads as like a life cycle stage. We've just been doing it for so long at this point. I mean, our CRM's 12 years old. So we just have it dialed in really. I love the UI of the lead object and I think it's awesome. And Max Cohen is the only one who's ever gotten me to think twice about it so far. So shout out to him for at least getting my gears turning.
He's a very
Um,
persuasive guy.
he is. But so like his argument is that you can associate separate leads to like a customer or to a contact or to a company, which I'm all for that. And I agree with that. And I think that is, like Dharmesh would say, one of the many ways to pet a cat. That's just not the way I pet cats. For me, I would almost argue you're only a lead once. Yeah, in my context, that methodology works well. You're a lead once, and then you're a customer from then on. Now, if you end up in another company, you're associated differently anyway, so you're gonna become a lead again. But for me, it's Cameron from Ref Partners comes in as a lead in my CRM. We close Cam, one call close. It was a huge deal. I did a great job in the sales process. Now he's a customer. Cam comes back and wants more business. I don't necessarily call that a lead again. I understand it's a new opportunity for revenue as a sales guy, but for me, it's you're still tagged as a customer, and now you're going to be part of my expansion pipeline, which is my cross sell upsell pipeline. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess being anti lead object is just more clickbaity than what I actually think about it. I think it's a great tool. I think it's really well built and has a lot of really cool functionality. Maybe down the road we'll adopt it internally, but for now, just life cycle stage just makes a lot more sense to me.
I'm on the same team, and I think that I think there was a point of pride for old time HubSpot users about
Yeah.
not having a lead object, right? Because Salesforce had the lead object
And Dynamics
built
did I
for
sold against it for so long. I'm like, dude, now what
right.
do I do? Yeah.
And the whole concept of the lead object was based on a world that doesn't exist anymore. And I had never worked in a company previously
Yeah.
that used the lead and contact record in Salesforce correctly or the way you're supposed to. It never made sense. But it seems that have the larger, more enterprise organizations probably do benefit from a lead object in the way HubSpot built it. And I would imagine it's there to help bring those people from some of the incumbents into the HubSpot ecosystem in a language they might be able to understand better to support their more complicated use cases. That's my guess.
Perhaps. Surely Cameron disagrees with us.
Yeah, Cameron.
So I'm in the camp of it depends. I think for the vast majority of people, life cycle stages lead status is more than sufficient. I think the main argument that I would see for usage of the lead object is going to be for really long, complex sales where you have somebody like bouncing, right? Because if you're talking lead status, for example, you go maybe contacted opportunity, but you don't really go back from being an opportunity. So that doesn't make sense. Life cycle stages, you might have a deal that's created, but that deal can linger in as a deal in a stage for a long period of time. And I think the lead object could make sense if you're trying to track maybe the nuances of what's happening within the minutia of that stage, or things are going to get bounced backwards. And so now you have somebody's changed. And so, anyway, all of that is to say, I think that for a really complex process where you really want to get into the minutia and the nitpicky of what's going on, it can make sense. I think for the vast majority of probably companies that are using HubSpot and are prone to be working with us, like in the ecosystem, they may not necessarily fit the bill. Now, there certainly are going to be plenty that do, but I think most people, to your point, Dylan, life cycle stages works because
Well, you also,
a customer still.
yeah, you also scratch the surface on something else that I believe in too. It's very early deal creation. It's like I'm creating deals very early. So if I have an opportunity from an existing customer who's already past the lead stage, right? They're a customer, but they want to do more business with us. Like they're in most cases that's being submitted as a referral from my services team, or they fill out a form to meet with me again. And I have programmed workflows to like create deals automatically for all those triggers. So for me, it's I've skipped the lead object. You're already in my sales pipeline now. And if you're in as new referrals submitted or new expansion opportunity, whatever stage you're in, and I disqualify you, I just mark that as a closed loss region, marked as disqualified with whatever note. And that doesn't count against my close rates. So I almost built the lead object into my pipeline early before it came out. So I don't know. I'm a big early deal creation guy because I don't know. For me personally, there's a challenge to stay on top of leads in the CRM, but I'll never miss a deal. If it's in my pipeline, like you can guarantee touches every 48 hours. So I was solving for a few things at once when I built it that way.
Only every 48 hours.
Depends on the deal. Some deals are getting way more than that.
Yeah, and this is where I think just back to the primary theme of making it fit, making your sales process and making your instance fit the methodology of your business, like that's really important. But at the same time, having everyone agree on what those definitions are and what those metrics mean, that's really important because if you have the executive team that says they want visibility into revenue at certain stages and you're using the lead object, and so maybe you're not capturing certain things that they want to see,
Yep.
you likely could still build reporting around it, but how is that being reported and does everyone agree on what they're seeing? And so the flip side is if we just talk about like early deal creation, which is something that you hit on, you can always filter out what you don't want to see, right? So if you have almost that BDR stage, for as some companies might have a sales
Yep.
pipeline with BDR stages, and if leadership doesn't care about those numbers pertaining to revenue, that then you just filter that out of your reports. So I think it's about tailoring what is important and what's needed for you.
Yeah, and that's an overarching theme in this conversation too, is like we all three disagree is not it's too like aggressive of a word, but we all three think differently about a lot of different nuances in the sales process and the way we build that in the CRM. And that's going to be consistent wherever you go.
Yeah.
So that's I said this earlier to check your ego at the door. Done is better than perfect. Build what you got to build. Get started with something and then evaluate as a team later. For me, I always wanted one pipeline because it's just way easier to follow along that way. But at the beginning of this year, we wanted to test it out and I'm starting to enjoy it. I had to tweak a ton of workflows for it, but I'm enjoying it. So I just think you got to be really agile. You can't, who cares whose idea it was? I want to make money. I want to make money for the company. And building on HubSpot really well is going to help do that. If it was my idea, sick. If it wasn't, then it's all good. I'm still working the deals.
That's where I think a lot of companies could do better with, and this is a very blanket statement, but just getting user feedback from their teams. I know that especially if you don't have a HubSpot admin or a dedicated CRM admin, that could be more difficult to do because then you probably are going like sales rep, manager, executive, and the CRM admin can really bridge that a little bit more as well. But being able to ask your reps, how do you believe the sales cycle works? How do you believe things could be better? And then using that direct feedback to make the instance more efficient.
Yep.
Now, reducing the amount of clicks is an incremental gain. So improving efficiency by improving the amount of clicks somebody needs to take, that's something that might produce better overall productivity. It may not necessarily result in the bottom line increase of X, but those little things are important because they do also contribute to morale as well. I'm really curious to hear because I know we've had a few guests on here where we've talked about this, but especially being both of you in growth marketing, and I know HubSpot believes heavily in attract, engage, delight.
Yeah.
We have the flywheel. And oftentimes organizations don't talk about outbound. And I know that there's the ABM tools and there's the prospecting workspace, which is continuing to evolve. But I'm curious to hear from both of you. How do both of you feel about outbound prospecting in HubSpot? Is it as intuitive as it could be, or does it seem like there's really just more of a focus on the inbound side of things?
I think HubSpot is built for it. I think sequences are great. I think HubSpot calling is getting more and more robust. It's going to lack some of the like power dialer functionality of some of the big calling platforms, of course. I'm anti cold call though, as a sales guy, so we don't really need it personally. We love HubSpot calling, and we definitely do target account selling, and we definitely dive in and go out and pick our own business as much as we can. But you'll, unless the economy just goes even crazier, you'll probably never see a Media Junction seller cold call you. So unless someone joins who's just amazing at it, we'll see. But
Very
that's a separate
appreciative of that, I
conversation.
have to say.
Yeah. As far as HubSpot goes, I think HubSpot's a great tool for it. If outbound and BDR process is part of your sales org, then I think HubSpot's a great tool for you. More than likely, you'll end up on something like Kixi or CallRail or AirCall to handle the mass of your dialing and texting. But yeah, I think HubSpot's built very well for outbound still.
Yeah. So I think that HubSpot's playbook, if you take a look at it, historically has been they had the core offering. Even when it started, the core offering was marketing automation. They built the CRM as a small add-on, very much an MVP. They take bets, and then the ones that kind of do well, they continue to make more and more robust. If you want to use HubSpot for basically everything in a go-to-market from end to end, you could. As complexity increases, there may be a requirement that goes beyond the built-in capabilities, and that you have to seek an external tool or an external technology that either adds additional functionality to the native functionality or is just a completely external tool. The great thing about HubSpot is that they have this open ecosystem that really empowers partners. We know this from as Deal Hub being great partners in that. I think that the level of thought and signal detection, as it were, that goes into outbound and targeting now for some companies is really high. I think there's a lot of folks out there, a lot of bigger companies that are leveraging the various insights they get from different tools and centralizing them somewhere in order to flag not just, oh, this account visited my website, but a whole bunch of other signals and combine them, maybe using AI to inform their outbound strategies. That's like pretty complicated use case today. And that's where, when I'm thinking about outbound and account-based marketing, a lot of my mind goes there lately. And I would imagine, given HubSpot's kind of playbook, that will be continually added into the platform as well. And they already started with the Clearbit acquisition, I think is a step in that direction.
And we all know the CRM makes the sales rep, right?
Oh
That's
yeah,
everyone's
totally.
on the same page.
Yeah, I'm a
All
musician.
you
We
need
always
is
say gears everything. It has nothing to do with the player. Yep,
that's it.
same concept.
I know that your instance, Dylan, is 12 years old. A lot of processes have probably evolved. Maybe you have some newer ones. Maybe you're operating mostly on established protocol. But when it comes to maybe a listener who is creating a newer process or is thinking about revamping their sales process, whether it's their pipelines or just overall, where would you suggest they start, like from discovery and then going through that process of evaluating what's broken, what's not, and just how did you have those conversations internally of, ooh, maybe we should try this?
Yeah, keep in mind we work with clients too who get new HubSpot all the time. So I think we would start with just an open conversation about what is and is not working. A lot of times people are leaving other tools and they have this idea that we're just going to migrate over to HubSpot like it's some flip of a switch or that it's some copy and paste job. And it's not. You're migrating off of that tool for a reason. So there are limitations that made you think HubSpot's a better tool. So we reject the term migration. We're rebuilding, we're reimagining the way you do, we'll say sales, but marketing, sales, service, RevOps, all of it. So I think we'd start with kind of what I alluded to in the very beginning. It's walk me through your buyer's journey from start to finish. How do they find out about you? What do they do once they do find out about you? What steps do they take before they get on with sales? What happens when they become a customer? How do you drive? How do you drive more output from those, or how do you drive more input from those customers too, instead of just spitting them out customers as an output? How do you get referrals and feedback surveys and things like that? Then from there, we built a HubSpot roadmap. This is how we start all of our engagements. It's the blueprint for which HubSpot is built over the next 12 months. Obviously, the goal would be that's going to be our 12-month retainer, is those 12 projects that we're scoping out, but it's not always the case. And you can take this roadmap with you, and you've hired a HubSpot admin who was a sales engineer at HubSpot for years, and he knows his stuff. Like, by all means, build it in-house, but still have a strategic conversation with someone who lives day in and day out with customers solving problems. You get to skip the guinea pig phase and go right into best practices if you do it that way. So I think if you're adopting HubSpot for the first time, I would really encourage you to have someone facilitate that conversation and that strategic dialogue who is impartial, has nothing to do with your organization, knows HubSpot really well, has seen a bunch of use cases, and can guide you through some kind of blueprinting or road mapping exercise. And then whoever builds it, an afterthought, honestly. If you want to keep that same agency to build it, that salesperson will love you. If you want to build it in-house, by all means, if you have the savviness for it and the bandwidth for it, great. But as you guys both know, like a lot of organizations don't have the savviness and bandwidth, or they just a lot of times just don't want to. They want to do what their job is. They're not HubSpot admins.
And we've touched on it a few times, but something that I love as a recurring theme, and in particular, because it really leans into HubSpot methodology, but identifying the customer journey. And I've often had pushback from leadership and executives on this because when you're building a sales pipeline, again, following HubSpot methodology, what you want to do is look at it from the customer POV. So it's not the contract was sent, it's the contract was received, right? Or the contract was signed. And those are how you identify various stages. And I think that's an interesting concept for a lot of sales leaders to consider, because it's difficult to trust that the sales rep is going to do what they want, and the end result of the customer having an output is what they're actually going to be measured on. So it's not how many proposals did I send, it's how many contracts were signed. Is that something that I know it can be open to interpretation, but is that something that you've seen a lot of companies tend to fall in line with, or do you tend to see a split with leadership that feels like, no, we want it to be based on sales rep actions?
I think you need both. So like we recommend, excuse me, we recommend running like a RevOps scorecard. So we run EOS over here. We run traction pretty religiously here. So if you're asking for my advice on stuff like that, it would be to be running a sales scorecard as a team. That sales scorecard is going to track all the metrics that matter. So one of those things is going to be proposals sent. I'm measured on revenue and proposals sent every week in my role here. Of course, I'm also measuring on how much we've actually closed too, and that obviously is going to trump everything else. But what's going to happen is it's like for performance plans over here, just to get gross with it real quick. If this comes from, I believe, Pete Caputa and Brian Halligan back in the early OG days of HubSpot sales, they set these performance plans up like this, where you're tracking activity and you're tracking outcomes. So if you're not hitting your outcomes, but you are hitting your activities, that tells me there's a coaching opportunity. You're doing the work. You're doing the things in the playbook. You're doing the things I've taught you to do. Now I need to be listening to your calls. What are you saying? Where are you dropping the ball? Are you taking too long between calls? Is your email copy weird? Are you too pushing on sales calls? What is it? I can at least find something there. But if you're not getting your outcomes and you're not hitting your activity metrics, that tells me either we have a huge drop in leads and there's something causing that, but then your outbound volume should be crazy. Or maybe we have a work ethic issue, or maybe like you haven't been coached on what to do when things are slow. Maybe you quiet quit on me and I didn't notice. Who knows? I think you have to track activity because activity breeds productivity. But if you track both, you can find out like what is the root here. The root here is either you're doing everything you're supposed to be doing, but maybe you could be doing it better, or you're not doing the things you're supposed to be doing at all. And I'm able to catch that early because I'm tracking it, and we can either correct it, or I'll give you a raving review on your next role, right? And it's not meant to be gross, but it's just like I think Pete said it this way. Pete Caputa said, it may have been Halligan that said it, but if you have your goals set for anything less than 100%, you're doing your sales team a disservice. Like, why would you set your goals for 70%? You may not trigger a plan, but I'm not looking for 70%ers.
And that's where ultimately, if we take this down to the really fundamental, I think everything stems from having healthy data in HubSpot. And so we talked about like the overall architecture of having a sales pipeline that fits your sales methodology, but then taking that down to the granular on the flip side, which is Are you asking for required properties? Are you using drop down selects instead of open text fields so you can measure against things? And do you have goals in HubSpot? Whether or not you're using the native goals feature is not the point. Can you track the amount of closed won revenue that a sales rep has? But then even taking it to your point, Dylan, the activities. How many calls are they making? How many emails are they sending? And then is there a correlation, right? If you have a ton of closed revenue and very low activity, maybe you're just doing really well. And on the flip side, if you have no closed revenue, you better have a lot of activity to show you're at least trying.
And you got to do a really good job at identifying patterns and giving your team enough time to be able to determine this guy consistently has 30% less calls than everybody, but is consistently at 115% of goal. So that tells me like it's not an anomaly. He didn't just do it in May. Almost every month he's less activity, more outcomes. So that tells me what he's doing on calls is really good. So I should be working on how do I replicate that type of efficiency? Whereas somebody who has a huge month in low volume, but then has a terrible month and the same volume, that tells me that's more of an anomaly than a pattern. So I think we can coach patterns, but we can't trust anomalies.
I love that. And I've worked with sales reps that their activity count could be well the outlier and their revenue was well the outlier in the opposite direction. And then we try to replicate it and their process doesn't always carry. But what did carry through month over month was the trend of their data. So we knew that even though we couldn't measure their activity against everyone else's, if they made 20 phone calls instead of the 100 that everyone else needed to make, they were still going to hit their number. And that was just because we knew what the productivity stacked up to. One of the last things I want to dig into here in this episode is your mantra: sell like a human. And this is probably different from the boiler room type of tactics that maybe some of our salespeople might be utilizing, I'm sure. But what does it mean to you to sell like a human, and how does one implement that type of mantra?
I've been saying this since before it was cool. I own the domain, selllikeahuman.com. So let's not get
more
it twisted
relevant
here.
today than ever.
Dude, yeah,
It
with
is.
AI especially.
Exactly.
Yeah, so people are starting to definitely, and I'm not gonna say I made it up. I'm like the Chick-fil-A of Sell Like a Human. I didn't invent it. Like they didn't invent chicken. They just invented the chicken sandwich. That's how I think about this. I didn't make it up, but I definitely brought it here. And it's getting a lot more attention lately. I would love to turn it into something, whether it's a framework or a mini book or something, but I don't know. I probably take this too far. I'm potentially too casual and too human, and I don't know that it would work for everybody. So definitely don't try to copy and paste what I do. But for me, I take all the weirdness out of sales. You're another human talking to me. I'll talk to you in the sales process like I would talk to you in the grocery store. Yeah, we're talking about different things. I'm not talking about what energy drink should I buy. We're talking about what you need my organization to help yours with. But some examples of this are like breaking a lot of traditional sales rules. Don't say the number first. First one to say the number loses. I break that rule all the time. On my first connect calls, I tell them the number first. And it's like, it's going to cost me what it costs me. And maybe I leave money on the table doing it that way. But I mean, I close it like 60%, which is anybody who says that's not good is lying. So for me, like I tell people, I'll even say this on a sales call. If Mark and I are on a call, what's up, Mark? Like, not to be salesy and weird, but I want to get a proposal together that you can sign. I'm at like $50,000 on a project like this. Does that freak you out, or is that about what you expected, or does that make you want to block my number? Like I say stuff like that all the time. And yes, it's lighthearted, it gets people to chuckle, but it gives me like real information. If you tell me I only have $15,000 for this, dude, we have a huge scoping issue. We got to talk about it. Or I only have $10,000 for this project. We're nowhere in the same ballpark. Now I know I'm totally tweaking the way that I'm going to be writing this proposal. Or I'm going to say, Mark, I love you, dude, but there's no way. So we'd have to talk about what a $10,000 MVP would look like, or talk about how we can break this up into like micro projects to work our way up to it. But I may have some room to help a little bit, but I'm definitely like, to build what you're asking for, it's going to take way more resources. So it just takes a lot of the ambiguity out. I don't want to play games. There's a deal that I've been at the finish line. Like we've done everything. We've redlined, we've negotiated, we got the budget approval. Like we're literally just waiting on the board to tell them they can sign. And it's been like that since March. It's driving me crazy. And a lot of people think that's a cold deal. That's not real. Why are you holding on to it? They're not going to close. They are. And we follow up once a week with gifts. I sent them a link from Step Brothers, just one that says, so, and they sent me like the one about bunk beds. Can we build bunk beds? And then they just sent back gifts saying still waiting, and it's Stanley from The Office like this. And I was like, that's selling like a human, man. These are guys that we talked a lot about football. We all know we're dealing with the annoying procurement stuff now. And I don't have to be, I hope this email finds you gentlemen well. What is the current status update so that I can update my production calendar? No, dude, are we still good? And that's how the whole sales process went. And it's an $80,000 website project. So it's a very good project. I still close huge businesses, but my kids might run in the room. My son wears superhero costumes a lot. I'm wearing 5-inch inseam shorts and I hide it well, but I'm just another dude over here. I happen to know HubSpot and websites really well, but anybody who thinks that I'm like too normal or that my hoodie is the reason why they're not going to do business with me is just not like a good fit for me. I don't know. We could do a whole episode on this. We probably should have done a whole episode on this because I care a lot about this. But in short, it's you're going to get the same version of me on a sales call that you're going to get in a webinar, that you're going to get at the baseball field, that you're going to get at Inbound. That's one thing I'm really proud of is I'm very consistently the same person.
I'm like shaking my head in agreement so much that my neck is hurting because I just
Yeah,
look, I use AI. It's a great
same.
tool.
Yeah.
The level of garbage selling that has resulted from the barrier being lowered is crazy. So the amount of cold calls I get, 99% of the phone calls I get on my phone, I don't answer and they don't leave a message. And it's not, I just don't answer the phone anymore. And my email inbox
Yeah.
is just people trying to sell my DMs or people trying to sell me stuff that's totally irrelevant. I don't want to, I don't need a buy franchise. Do a little research and realize I'm not a
Dude, how
franchisee,
many
right?
people have
Like,
I told I'm not in the market for franchising? Golly.
yeah. So I love this. I think as one of the lessons I've learned is that on the consumer side, places like Amazon changed the way people buy.
Yep.
Individuals were empowered, or it flipped, everything's about their experience. And I think that changed the expectations of a B2B buyer because you don't leave the B2C buyer at home. They want a good experience. They don't want this kind of corporate thing. And so I think that the individual B2B buyer still has big influence on the larger account. And being a human is a differentiator at this point.
Yeah. And it sounds raw and kind of phony, honestly, when I tell about what it means to me, but it's one of those things that you just have to see to get. Anybody who I've sold to will tell you that, and it sounds like gross. I'm like complimenting myself, but I very frequently get people saying this was a breath of fresh air. Like this was different. And it means a lot. And I hope to turn it into something that I can help people do in their own way too. But I also think I've also seen reps that I've hired try to do it like I do it. And I think that's the opposite of what you should be doing. Like selling like a human is
Exactly.
going to look very different. I say dude and bro. I call women dude sometimes. Like it just slips out and it doesn't feel gross. Like I'm not some Patagonian sales bro. It's just that's how I talk. And I think when I had a rep last year who tried to say the things that I said and it just felt forced. And teaching sell like a human is he was an African American man. Like he and I are very different. I'm a white dude with a mullet. So I was just trying to explain to him how, yeah, it
I was
is.
looking for the
I
party
just got
in
to
the
cut.
back. All
Yeah.
right.
But I was just trying to explain to him, man, I'm in the South. I wear short sleeve hoodies. I like football a lot. We're very different. Don't try to copy what I'm doing. Selling like a human means just however you would talk to your friend at the store is how you should sell. You just happen to ask questions about HubSpot and RevOps and websites.
And I want to tie a bow on this concept of selling like a human, Dylan. I think we probably do need either a full podcast dedicated to this,
Yeah.
like a series dedicated to selling like a human, or certainly a full episode. Because, one thing that I say is often is that in revenue operations, it's not necessarily our job to make sales reps better. I know you're VP of sales, and so that's different for you in your role, but our job as revenue operations, and my job, I should say, and as the CRM admin and the architect of HubSpot, is to make the CRM function as an extension of the business and the people using it. But at the same time, if the people using it aren't comfortable or competent in their role, then the CRM hits its limit. And I think all of us have been experienced, because I know I have, where a sales rep sees you being successful. They ask you, how do I do what you do? I want to say what you say. And it doesn't sound natural. It doesn't sound authentic. And the moment it's not
Yep.
natural or authentic, done.
Yeah, totally. And that's why it works for me. And that's why I haven't been able to turn this into some framework or book or course, because it's just, I don't know, I'm just talking normally. I'm just being me. And but it comes from a place of like really knowing your stuff. Yeah, if you're selling a product or service, you should really know that thing inside and out. And when I worked at HubSpot, I got tons of compliments from engineers on my demos because I knew the product so well. And I just always, I'm a 3-time Team Spirit Award winner, baby. I know my Media Junction, right? So I think that you got to really know your product and services inside and out, because like I'm a musician. Whenever I'm at a gig or whatever, I have to know the songs inside and out because it allows room for improvisation. It allows room for eye contact. It allows room for more like dancing. And I'm not just looking at my guitar hoping I hit the right notes. I know the notes. So it's just like here with my services. I can riff raff why you should build your website with us, why you should use HubSpot as your CRM, why you should get the whole growth suite, because I know all that stuff. But I'm able to now focus on the person on that sales call more than my playbook. If you want to sell like a human, you have to become much more of a master of your craft than I think people even. I think I'm so casual and quirky that people don't know that I really do know my stuff until they talk to me, because I'm just so hyper focused on being a goofy dad with a mullet. That's just like my brand. And it's not until we really start nerding out over websites and HubSpot that people realize, oh, I can really trust this guy to help me make some good decisions. So I think the better your product and service, the more room you're going to have to go off road a little bit with the things you say, the things that you do, and you're able to riff a little bit more on these calls.
Brief moment of appreciation for the fact that we can even say that nerding out over HubSpot and data architecture, like that's even a thing.
Oh, yeah.
And I appreciate that so much.
My family can't tell anyone what I do for a living, but that's all right.
That's right. That's why we all have each other.
Exactly.
Dylan, thank you so much for joining us on today's episode of the Sprocket Pod. Dylan Wickliffe, VP of Growth for Media Junction. We've got my co-host Mark Lerner here with Deal Hub. And then for those who don't know, if you're listening outside of LinkedIn, make sure you follow all of us on LinkedIn, Dylan Wickliffe, Cameron Collins, Mark Lerner. And then if you aren't a member of the Sprocketeer group, go ahead and check us out in Slack. Join Sprocketeer with the link in the show notes. And then be sure to check out our friends Deanna Gloff and Kyle Jepson. They host the HubSpot Admin Hug on Tuesdays at 10 o'clock Central. And then finally, if you are checking this out on LinkedIn or any other platform and you want to view old episodes or previous episodes, we are on Spotify and YouTube. Thank you very much, everyone. Sprocket on.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thanks, y'all.